episode of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. This is episode number 225, being recorded on July 27th, 2026, on a Monday, on a gorgeous day out. We've been having a lot of really, really nice days out lately where the egregiousness of the heat from the summer is, knock on wood, behind us. We're getting some really nice days. I was outside yesterday grilling. The weather was beautiful. The cats have been enjoying the windows being open. It's great driving with the windows down, feeling the wind kind of rush right through you, run across your skin, run through your hair. It's been a really kind of wonderful time right now. Um, I tried to record this episode a couple days ago, but boy, oh boy, things were not on my side. I think I tried recording this like 5 or 6 times, and it just was not going to happen. So here we are. So if you're hearing this, then it all went well, and then if not, then I'm talking to no one. But either way, I got the cat right here. Got I probably should refill my water before I started this, but that's all right. Maybe I can pause it and go for it. But yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys are all doing very well. We're reaching the end of the summer. Got about another month or so, so to speak. There's the times when the seasons literally start on a calendar, and then there's the times where, depending where you are in the world, when you either be feeling a lot of heat, a lot of cold. A lot of places in the world don't get all 4 seasons, so it's also the mentality as well. So if you're in a place like the West Coast and like California, then November, December, when it's still hot, you have that kind of end of the year mentality, that kind of Christmas mentality, wrapping up the year's goals, all the things you're trying to accomplish. Excuse me, I kind of have like a raspy sort of throat right now. I think I need some more of this water. But anyways, kind of lost my train of thought there. But the point is, I hope you guys are all doing very well and staying true and staying focused on your art, on your goals, working on your novels, your films, your albums, your whatever it is, man. Those are always kind of my go-to because, talking about the arts, talking about really kind of just putting the effort, and it's very easy to kind of always want the end result, to see everybody else having the end result being like, oh man, well this person, they've already made all these films, they've written all these books, or they've made all these albums or done all these paintings, but it's all like, there's no clear time frame for anything. It gets done when it gets done, and ultimately you gotta have to focus on you and not compare yourself to others. Because if you're gonna do that, then the time that you would have spent working on your own craft and your art and molding it and shaping it into whatever way that you saw fit, you'd spend seeing somebody else's, going like, oh man, it's the same people who are like, oh man, why does this person, oh, why do they get a movie deal? Why do they do this and that? And it's sort of like, well, they put in the time, they put in the effort. There's definitely a lot of luck there. No two paths are the same, but ultimately you got to kind of work on what you're doing, man, because it's ultimately your life and your life to live, and there's no point in kind of putting yourself neck and neck with someone else who maybe has different circumstances, has different advantages and disadvantages. You really kind of just focus on you. But anyways, there, kind of rambling on there a little bit. Let's see here. I was looking at the Criterion Channel's recent playlists they had, and I guess I wanted to mention briefly. I went through whenever they post a new collection, I always look at the films I haven't seen and the films I have seen, and they recently posted. Well, I said recently, they're gonna have new collection soon, but a new collection called starring Harry Dean Stanton, which has about, I would say, 15 to 20 of his films. It's a good kind of look at his filmography all the way back from Riding the Whirlwind from 1966 up to Lucky in 2017, and a good variety of films from him. Harry Dean Stanton is just one of these actors, even if you don't know the name, you see him in a bunch of stuff. He's been in a lot of big kind of mainstream Hollywood films. He was in like Alien. Horror fans would know him for, excuse me, know him from films like Christine. He's like a small part in that, but he's memorable. He does a lot of different kinds of films. A lot of David Lynch fans remember him from like Wild at Heart and The Straight Story, of course. And there's a good collection of films on here. There had been a couple that I hadn't seen, but for the most part, I had seen just about all of these. And looking on here, let's just go through quickly. It's a good kind of glance at his career as a whole. I mean, he's somebody who has been in so many films, and you're obviously not going to be able to, for legal reasons, for rights reasons, get them all into one kind of playlist. But as a general overall look at a filmography, it's a good starting point. I mean, Harry Dean Stanton, I think, passed away when he was 90 or 91. He passed away a couple years ago. His last film that he filmed but not released was Lucky from 2017. Um, directed strangely enough by, or I shouldn't say strangely, but directed interestingly enough by John Carroll Lynch, who's a really terrific actor. I think most people probably remember him his very memorable role from David Fincher's Zodiac. But he's been in a bunch of stuff. He's one of these actors who just pops up in everything. Um, but I think Lucky was the last thing he filmed, to my knowledge. But he'd been in a couple other films after. He'd been in. I never watched the Return of Twin Peaks, but he was in that apparently, and a couple other films, Frank and Ava, which I think I actually have seen weirdly enough on Tubi, and then Sinatra Eternity, which I have no idea what that is. Um, but looking on here, I'll do just a quick run through here in case you don't have the Criterion channel. I'll be very brief with these. Ride in the Whirl. I can't say that. Ride in the Whirlwind, 1966. Monty Hellman, very good film. Cool Hand Luke, very good film, of course. Where the Lilies Bloom, pretty good actually. Not terribly seen. It looks like, but I did like it quite a bit. Farewell My Lovely with Robert Mitchum wasn't crazy about it. It with that film, I felt like they were trying to do not even necessarily a throwback. They wanted to do something more of a traditional noir in 1975, and it just didn't totally work for me. I saw Clint Quains really liked it, so take that as you will. Straight Time, I've talked about before on the show. Love that film. That's just a really incredible film. Wise Blood, not great. The later John Huston stuff, man, I just cannot get into. I recently watched The Dead, probably about a year or so ago, and man, I think that may actually be his last film, and man, I just did not like it. John Huston is a filmmaker I like a lot, but there's a certain point where I just kind of check out of his work. Escape from New York, solid film, John Carpenter, 1981. I mean, it's a film that I think gets better on multiple viewings. I know a lot of people don't like it. It's narratively, I think, always been a little off, in terms of not having a real identity. But with that said, I do think that the certain atmosphere and vibe with it is really exceptional. Also, I love that score. There's two pieces of score in that, the main kind of theme, and then the piece called Engulfed Cathedral. I always think is just phenomenal. Christine, another John Carpenter film. Maybe my favorite John Carpenter film, honestly. That and maybe like Assault on Precinct 13. Christine is one. Man, every time I see it, I think I just love it more and more. The previous, Paris, Texas, from Wim Wenders. I mean, I think it's a pretty well known film, very classic. A lot of people will consider this Wim Wenders' his best or one of his best, and it's a masterpiece for sure. Repo Man by Alex Cox. Love this film, one of my all-time favorites. Alex Cox, a filmmaker I'm kind of iffy on. I like some of his stuff, not so crazy about some of his other stuff. I think I may have seen just about all of his films. Maybe besides Sid and Nancy, ironically, which is one of his biggest. But I think I've seen everything else, like Walker, Highway Patrolman, Straight to Hell. But Repo Man, I mean, it's total cozy film. Which if I'm not really into like the whole. I think at one point I was into like the punk kind of music and stuff. I'm really not into that anymore. It's not my kind of thing. But I still love that film, and I still love its own world that it sets up. Very comic book like, very loose on narrative. I mean, the rest of it is just so funny in the film. Harry Dean Stanton is great. Last Temptation of Christ by Martin Scorsese. Great film. I mean, I talked about this probably a little while ago when I was talking about Silence and the great kind of Scorsese religious trilogy of Temptation of Christ, Kundun, and Silence. Wild at Heart, David Lynch, 1990. Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, 92. Fear of Loathing in Las Vegas, Straight Story, Inland Empire, and then two I hadn't seen, Harry Dean Stanton, Partly Fiction, which is a documentary, and then Lucky from 2017, which also has a role from David Lynch as well. David Lynch actually also appears in Partly Fiction, which is a documentary. Like I said, it's pretty short. I think it's only about 70 minutes or so, and it's less of a look at Dean Stanton's career as a whole, more so about where he is towards the end of his life, sort of, his life up to that point. Sort of like he leads a very quiet life. He's a very kind of solitary man. He's very he doesn't really, you get the sense he doesn't really put too much concern into the idea of like an actor of a role. I mean, he takes it seriously, but he's also not somebody who gets hung up on it, in a very mannered, very relaxed way. And it's great seeing his interactions with David Lynch as well when they're kind of just hanging out at the house. You get a sense of a long-term friendship. And I think these were the only David Lynch films that he appeared in, was Wild at Heart, Fire Walk with Me, The Straight Story, Inland Empire, and then Twin Peaks: The Return. And I've seen obviously those four Wild at Heart, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, Straight Story, and Inland Empire. And of those four, it's interesting how I'm not really crazy about any of those films except for The Straight Story, which I think is very good. But Wild at Heart, I think is okay. Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, I'm not a fan of. I'm also not the biggest Twin Peaks fan. I mean, I like season one. It's okay. I've never quite been head over heels with it. I think that's part of the reason why I just have not really had any interest in watching The Return. I just don't really care, truthfully. And then Inland Empire, I think is actually pretty bad. I know a lot of people like that film. That might actually be my least favorite David Lynch film, including Dune. I think Inland Empire is an interesting idea. I like Lynch, who was, kind of having a very loose sort of narrative, doing almost like these vignettes in a way with a lot of digital cameras. But to me, the movie's just a total mess, and I just can't get behind it. I tried once, and I really didn't like it. But yeah, there's a lot of solid films on there for sure. And I would say if you haven't seen um, Partly Fiction and Lucky, and it's good revisiting those David Lynch films or watch them if you hadn't seen it before because it does add a sort of extra layer to that relationship. You sort of get the idea or the sense they're on the same wavelength. They sort of get each other in a way. But really good stuff there. And I also want to mention briefly, also on the Criterion Channel, which apparently no one's really talking about according to the Letterbox sort of logs, which isn't a, I don't think it's like a be all end all of the popularity of a film, but especially now when a lot of people are on Letterboxd, a lot of people are logging a lot of films on millions of people, it is kind of interesting to see how a film is seen. But I was talking about the Niñon uh, Sevilla collection, which is just four films: Aventurera, Carita di Chilo, Take Me in Her Arms, and Victims of Sin. I have watched Evan Turera. Very good crime film, really solid. It starts with like a murder suicide and sort of gets into this weird relationship between this mother and this girl. Carita di Chilo, which I forget the English title of it. This was actually, I don't know if this wasn't a lost film, but I think the elements of this are lost because the version of this on the Criterion Channel is from a 16 millimeter print, which isn't in the best condition, but it is still a cool film as well. And then I've been in the middle of Take Me in Your Arms, which is very good. But again, that has like I think 200 logs on Letterboxd, so I don't know if people just aren't watching these or they just don't care or what. But I mean, they're short. They're all. I mean, the longest one is Aventurera, which is an hour 42, but the rest are, just about under an hour and a half. And Victims of Sin, which actually got a Criterion, which I haven't seen yet, but will be watched in due time. But yeah, I wanted to keep an eye out on those, or at least I wanted to mention those as well. To if you're looking through the Criterion channel and not going immediately for the ones that pop up right up first. But either way, we'll move on from there. Let's see. Moving on from there, I have my notes here of what I want to talk about, and there is plenty to talk about. I'm just a little unorganized at the moment, but yeah, actually, okay, let's talk about that. So I guess I'll briefly mention because Terrence Malick has been on the mind of late when I had watched The Tree of Life, rewatched it, I should say, when I talked about it on my 20 favorite films of the 21st century so far, and I had that Criterion, which I watched when it came out, and then after talking about it, because it was on the mind, I wanted to watch it again. And I did recently just watch Song to Song, which I won't talk too long about because I don't have a whole lot to say about it, but because Terrence Malick's been brought up so much lately, I thought it was worth at least bringing up to the conversation. So at this point, the last film of his I need to see is The New World with Colin Farrell, which I have somewhere here. I don't know where I put it. Oh, there it is. It's actually right there next to me. Okay. Well, that will be watched in due time. But this era of Malick, when he did about 5 films in a row, um, the Tree of Life and A Hidden Life kind of bookending this mini trilogy of his when he was doing this sort of filming, very freewheeling kind of camera, very quiet, soft narration. Did To the Wonder. And then he did Knight of Cups, which I like a lot. And then he did Song to Song, which I hadn't seen, but finally did. And I didn't even avoid it or anything. I just hadn't got to it yet. But yeah, Song to Song, I feel like at this point is a little tricky to talk about in terms of having the context of To the Wonder and Knight of Cups. Because at this point, because all 3 films came out consecutively, I think there starts to become a little bit of what's what I'm looking for. I won't say repetition, even though it is there, but it definitely becomes a point of how do I want to phrase this here? There starts to be this expectation of what you're going into it with, because with two, I mean, even with Knight of Cups, you already have To the Wonder at that point, and you have an idea of it, and it does follow that style. But Knight of Cups, I think, feels more cohesive than To the Wonder. It has that very loose, very unstructured storytelling, because with these films, I don't think there's really much of a script they're going off of. I think it's a lot of allowing the actors to sort of feel out a scene and have a basis of what to do. I mean, you have a lot of the same kind of movements, a lot of the same sort of feelings, the sort of intimacy of characters just being very close and intimate with each other, not even necessarily sexually, but very intimate with one another. Even though there is this kind of underlying layer of sexuality that Terrence Malick seems to almost kind of take away from at a certain point. Because even in Song to Song, there's a subplot sort of Rooney Mara being involved sexually with this other woman, but he doesn't really kind of focus on it. It's there, but it's also not like indulging in it. It's not almost really even interested in it. It's more so about this character almost sort of uh being disinterested with everything else going on in her life that going off with this other person. But I think with this film, if you watch it on its own, you might get more out of it. But at this point, and I think may have been the reason why I didn't necessarily run to it when it came out. Although now, if it had been released, I would have definitely made a point to have seen it. But I think I had an idea of it, and it didn't interest me to kind of go through this again. In a lot of the same ways that when A Hidden Life came out, I had an idea of that as well, not knowing that that was going to be closer to something like The Tree of Life, which is why, I mean, he made these five films fairly consecutively, but The Tree of Life and A Hidden Life, they feel um, far more cohesive while still maintaining that new sort of way of filmmaking he likes to do. Whereas you can have these actors, and you don't necessarily need a stick to the script style, but you are still working on an outline, and you are still working to make the spine of the film. Whereas with these three films, there is that there, but it also kind of feels like, I don't know. You kind of get the sense of that anything could happen, for better or for worse. And I think that's why Knight of Cups, for whatever reason, I think just works far more than To the Wonder or this, because this, I just didn't. I liked it enough. I mean, it's great to see a new Terrence Malick film, and it's just great to see him have this dose of inspiration after being so sporadic with. I mean, the Thin Red Line is '98. The New World is like, I think, 2005, 2006, and then from there we get, The Tree of Life 2011. To the Wonder, I think, was like 2013. Knight of Cups was 2015, I think. This was 2017, and then A Hidden Life was 2019. So they're making them very. Don't quote me on those days, or those years, I should say. Yeah, 2015 and then 2012. Okay, so I was a little off, but they feel like so rapid fire. But with the amount of footage that he shoots for them, I think he kind of just lets them decide what direction the film wants to go in, which is fine. But at this point, it's more so of I'm watching this, not getting as much out of it. I think he's really great at capturing nostalgia, capturing intimacy, capturing the way these characters really kind of flow through one another in their personal lives, and even their professional lives, because we have this great kind of back and forth with Michael Fassbender and Ryan Gosling, and their kind of turmoil where their professional relationship is deteriorating, but it still feels something a bit more personal between the two rather than just strictly professional. But also, I want to say that with which I'll get into in a little bit, going from here to something else. But I do like enough of the film, but I think that at this point, because it's the third in this unofficial trilogy, it's a little over 2 hours. I I kind of wonder if these would work better in a certain setting. Whereas, I'm watching these at home. Would it be better if I was able to experience these in a theatrical setting in an IMAX? I mean, I feel like I'm kind of shocked that these never, or Terrence Malick has never done more with IMAX, because these are the kinds of films where there's some just, I mean, amazing, amazing cinematography in this. This was the same cinematographer who worked with Inarritu, and I think worked with Alfonso Cuarón, that who you watch The Revenant, or you watch like Gravity, and it's that same kind of style where they're able to flow the camera around and have it be very airy and dreamlike. But this is more specific to Malik's style. This is Emmanuel Lubezki, who has done those films. He's done a couple other films as well, and he's a great cinematographer. He worked, like I said, he did like Birdman as well for Inarritu. Um, he did. I mean, he's worked with Malik before on like The New World, and weirdly enough, funny enough, he's done The Cat in the Hat, which is bizarre in his filmography, but you got to work. It is a cool film. I will say I would recommend it more as context to Malik's filmography rather than a good film on its own. If I'm looking at his later work after The Tree of Life, well, when I say later work, let me say this: his trilogy of work, I would say Knight of Cups is the one I would go to. That's the one I think I got the most out of. That felt the most cohesive of the three. And as much as I like To the Wonder and I like this, but they're not ones that I think totally work for me and do start to kind of get into the repetition a little bit, especially at this point. But with that said, mentioning Ryan Gosling, as I'll mention briefly, which I wasn't going to talk about, but because I kind of just made the connection right now, I might as well. Is that I talked about before. I guess I kind of just miss this era of Ryan Gosling when he was, Ryan Gosling is an actor who I think just got too comfortable playing as the same kind of version of the same characters. This era when he was doing stuff, like this, when he did his film Lost River, which I don't think a lot of people have even seen. His a film he directed with Saoirse Ronan, Eva Mendes, Christina Hendricks, which feels like a lot of inspiration from Nicholas Winding Refn. And then you look at the films he was doing from that era. He's doing Drive, which I just recently rewatched and just held up and then some. And then Only God Forgives, which I've been a fan of since it released. But it's a shame because now it's sort of like you look. I think Ryan Gosling is a very good actor, but when I look at the projects that he's choosing, it becomes incredibly uninteresting. I don't care about Barbie. I don't care about Free Guy or whatever it's called, or Fall Guy, whatever. I don't care. He's doing like a Star Wars movie now. And he's doing like a Marvel now. It's like at what point do you just kind of lose interest in an actor? And I'm at that point now. I just when I see these films that like he's in this, and then I see like Only God Forgives, and I see like Drive, and just taking really when he's taking chances on films that may not be critically or commercially well received, but are more memorable than what, another Star Wars, another Marvel, another oh, he's being silly in Barbie. Okay, I'm not knocking those movies at all. I know it sounds like I am, but really those are a certain kind of movie, and I get it. But when I watch these films, it makes me like, damn, like he really was like one of my favorites for a while, and now he has just completely lost me. I just have no interest in what he's doing next because it's not going to be anything interesting like this. It's not going to, whether it's good or bad. I'll take a film I'm not crazy about over a film that I may like more, but it's the same kind of thing. And I think a lot of actors kind of fall into that where they get a certain idea of who they are as a personality to sell. Like even Sam Jackson, I think fell into that at one point. I've seen so many of his films. When you watch stuff like The Red Violin or Eve's Bayou, he's playing these really interesting different characters, and then now he's just playing Sam Jackson. He's just playing that character, that person. And that's what it is. Or even recently watched The Sunset Limited with him and Tommy Lee Jones. Really terrific play adapted into a film. And that feels so distant from, kind of what he's doing now, where when you get a great filmmaker like Tarantino who can kind of rein him in and give him a really memorable, like good performance, even though he falls through a little bit of the Sam Jacksonisms and the Hateful Eight a little bit. It still feels far more interesting than just, again, like another just generic, Marvel movie or anything like that. But I did want to briefly mention, I guess, I wasn't going to talk about it, but in terms of Ryan Gosling and in terms of Nicholas Winding Refn, I wanted to mention her Private Hell, the new film from Nicholas Winding Refn, who for whatever reason, I guess I thought was taking a break, but I completely forgot that he had done two miniseries since his last film, The Neon Demon. He had done Too Old to Die Young for Amazon, and then he had done Copenhagen Cowboys for Netflix. Too Old to Die Young, I actually recently restarted because I started it and I didn't finish it for whatever reason. That was in 2019, and then in 2022, he did Copenhagen Cowboys. Did a couple shorts after that. He did some music videos, I think. But this was Her Private Hell is his first feature directed feature since The Neon Demon in 2016. And this was getting announced, or this was getting talked about. This premiered at Cannes, and I think this wasn't in main competition. I think it was maybe an out of competition, or like what is it? It's not like their midnight series. It's like their like late. I don't know what it is, but it came out. It was getting bad reviews. People were talking about it like it wasn't very good, and it was just whiplash. It was just, I remember when Only God Forgives came out. It got bad reviews. No one knew what to make of it. I thought it was great. The Neon Demon came out, got bad reviews. I thought it was great. And then this, I don't want to walk in with any sort of expectation. I'm not ready to like it because it's Nicholas Winding Refn, who's just one of my very favorite filmmakers. And I'm not going to walk in expecting something bad because it has bad reviews. I'm just going to watch it as a film. And wouldn't you believe, it was great. I would say if you're not a fan of the former two, I can't imagine why you would get into this, but to me, this feels very much where he picked off from. This feels very much him picking up where the Neon Demon left off. It's that same ambiguous story, really opaque neon. There's a lot of fog in this. A lot of characters longing for something more. I mean, we have this sort of converging stories between Sophie Thatcher is playing this character Elle, who lives in this sort of futuristic metropolitan sort of like sci-fi sort of like city where they're like above the clouds. There's fog everywhere. She's an actress, and we follow her and this other character, Charles Melton, who is looking for his daughter, and in between the stories, sort of like bridging them together, is a serial killer that's on the loose, and how it sort of connects both of them. But it's one of these films, man, where it's like I think Refn makes this atmosphere, and he makes it like a dream in a way, where it feels like you're in a haze. It feels like the kind of film to watch late at night where you are just going with these long, kind of quiet sequences. You're going with the great Pino Donaggio soundtrack, which, by the way, I had no idea that Pino Donaggio was doing the soundtrack, and it's fantastic. I mean, it's one of the best scores because normally, I think his last two films he did with Clint Mansell, and those are great soundtracks too. I always remember the score from Only God Forgives. It's actually my ringtone for a while. The main "Wanna Fight" theme. But as this goes along, I mean, it is ambiguous, but I don't think this is hard to follow or anything. Because even by the end, it's pretty straightforward what's going on. It's, not entirely in reality. It's very much a lot of dream where, characters sort of come and go. Characters are really there to fulfill a certain purpose while at the same time longing for something more intimate with one another. Sophie Thatcher feels very isolated in this world. She lives in like with these women, and she has this sort of attraction to the people around her, and has this fascination with her stepmom, played by Havana Rose Liu, who was just in another film, Tuner. And I think she's actually a very good actress. I don't know what else she's been in besides these two, but she is very good. I like her quite a bit. Oh, I guess she was in. I think I actually have, no, I actually have seen her in quite a bit of films now. Lurker, No Exit, Power Ballad. I don't remember her for some reason in those, but she's great in the film. But yeah, I mean, it's a new Nicholas Winding Refn film. I think if you are a fan of his, I don't see, or at least a fan of his last couple. I don't see. I don't think there's really much to be surprised about in terms of the kind of film that is. If you're not a fan of those, or if you've not seen those, then I can understand being kind of turned off by it. But for me, I walked in with a certain idea of what I assumed it probably was going to be, and it was that, but it also felt very refreshing. It felt very much like he's doing what he does best, but he's really great at sort of having this underlying sexuality and this really kind of grisly violence, and these long quiet sequences of characters sort of reacting and longing for one another. It's a great film, man. It's one of my favorites of the year, and you're gonna like it if you're familiar with his work or not. Or I'm saying if you're familiar with his work, I think you're gonna know whether it's gonna be your thing or not. If not, I mean, I can't imagine it's appealing to a general audience. I'm kind of surprised this got as wide release of a release as it did. But that's what it is. I think it's one of the year's best films, and I am out of time with that. So I'm glad I could at least get this episode finally out. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I got some other stuff I am working on for the show that'll be coming very soon. Knock on wood in the next week. So we'll see what happens with that. But until then, take care. All the best. God bless. And until next time.